Hello, this is Steve, and today I'm going to show you how to install the GFX products at greenfuelh2o.com. Now I wanted to go over the different kits that are available at greenfuelh2o.com. First of all, let's go over the generators. There are 4 different kits available. This generator is a 20 plate and it is good for 1 to 5 liter engines. This one here is the 30 plate and it is good for 5 to 10 liter engines. And this here is the 40 plate cell and it is good for 10 to 15 liter engines. The 15 and above liter engines will have a dual 40 plate cell. The reservoir tanks for these systems vary. For the 20 plate cell, the 1 to 5 liter engine, you'll have a 2-quart reservoir. 5 to 10 liter engine will have a 3-quart reservoir. 10 to 15 liter engine will have the 6-quart reservoir, and the 15 plus liter system will have a 6-gallon reservoir. This video will go over the common installation procedures for all vehicles. Some of the components you will find in your kit may look different, but they serve the same purpose. In the smaller kits, you'll have a circuit breaker that looks like this, and in the larger kits, your circuit breaker will look like this. They perform the same function, just one can carry more amps than the other. This is a relay. In the smaller systems, you'll see this relay. In the larger systems, you'll see this relay here. For the install today, we'll be using the 30 plate system. It is for 5 to 10 liter engines, and since we have a 5.7 liter, we'll be using the 30 plate system today. Okay, let's go over the items we'll be using for this install. Got a cordless drill and a 3/4 inch paddle bit, a right angle drill with a nut driver, stubby Phillips. This here is a nut driver for the clamps. You can also use a straight screwdriver. Wire cutters. I've got a long Phillips screwdriver, a hammer. We've got our miscellaneous machine bolts, some 1/4 inch washers, utility knife. This is our crimper. Socket set with some sockets, socket driver, voltmeter, some cutters to cut the clamps for the HHO generator. Got a pair of lineman's pliers. We use this here to crimp the large electrical connectors. Some zip ties to keep it all nice and tidy. Over on this side, we've got a Sharpie, mixing stick, mixing container, some potassium hydroxide, distilled water, a 1 teaspoon measuring device. This is an optional scale, our gloves, and our chemical splash goggles. Okay, the first thing we need to do is find a good place to mount the generator and the reservoir. Now this could be difficult in some vehicles because the components of your car are jam-packed in there and it may not look like there's any place to install these, but I'm going to show you a couple tricks here, a couple places that are hidden that you can install the HHO generator. On this truck you can see there's a lot of room right here in front of the grill, so we're going to mount our reservoir tank here and our HHO generator right down here on the frame rail. On other vehicles, especially small cars, behind the bumper there's usually a void in behind the bumper, so you could take the bumper off and mount it there. But on most vehicles, right in here between the wheel and the front bumper, in this area here, the wheel well, if you get in here and you take off the wheel skirt, you'll find that there's a lot of room, a big open void in here. So on most vehicles you can install your HHO generator in this area. You never want to install the generator inside the vehicle. For obvious reasons, if you were to spring a leak, the HHO would escape into the vehicle, and you don't want that. You don't want to install it in a trunk. You may think that the trunk area is sealed from the inside, but really all there is your seats, and that HHO can seep into the driver's area. Also, something to keep in mind when you're installing the reservoir or the generator, keep in mind where your radiator is. Right here is my radiator, and I've got a radiator here. If you install the reservoir or the generator too, right in front of your radiator, it could cause a vehicle not to cool right. So you want to make sure that you don't block any air that needs to get through the radiator to cool the engine. So today we're going to install the reservoir in this area here. Okay, we've got the reservoir tank installed. See, we use these mounting holes to mount the generator. Make sure you mount it nice and secure. You don't want anything to come off from the vibration of the road. Just make sure you do a good job securing that. Next, we're going to go over how to install the generator. Okay, there's a couple of things you need to know about this generator before you install it. This side is the front. You'll know the front because you'll see the nuts on the bolts. And on the front you have a drain plug and a straight barb fitting, and you'll have a 90-degree barb fitting. The 90-degree barb fitting is the top, and this is the output. The straight barb fitting is the bottom of the generator, and that's the input. When you're orienting this into the vehicle, when you install it, it can only be installed like this. This is the upright position. Installing it like this, or upside down, or flat, will cause the generator not to function properly. So it needs to be installed in this position. It can be slightly off to one side or the other, but your goal is to get it installed upright like this. On the back of the generator you'll see two more ports. The top port again is the output, and the bottom port is the input. 20-plate generator, everything is the same except for on the back you won't have any ports. Okay, now we've installed the clamps. I don't have them tight yet because I want to fit it to the vehicle. But you can install the clamps, one on each end. On the 20-plate generator, that's the 1 to 5 liter system, you'll get one clamp and you just install it right in the middle. On the 5 to 10 liter, the 10 to 15 liter, and the 15 plus liter, you'll get 2 clamps. Okay, I'm up under the vehicle and looking for a good place to mount this. You can see I've got the mounting brackets on, and I think we're going to mount this unit right up in here. This will be a good secure area, and it'll keep up out of the most of the dirt and debris that's coming up and hitting it while we're driving. So I'm going to go ahead and install it right there. Okay, you can see that I've got the generator mounted. I mounted it this side out, front side out, so I can get to the positive and negative terminals. I've also added a little bracket to the bottom just to give a little bit more stability. Let me show you what it looks like on the top. Okay, we're up top here now. And there's the front of the generator. And then See, we mounted the brackets here. We mounted them in 2 spots. Make sure it's nice and secure. When installing this generator, you need to keep in mind the position of your reservoir. The reservoir must be mounted above the generator. It can't be mounted to the side or below it. It must be above the generator. This output port must not be above the input port of the reservoir, or vice versa. If that happens, the generator will not flow correctly and it will not function properly. Next, we're going to go ahead and hook up the plumbing. I'll show you how to do that. Okay, I have connected the hoses to the generator. So on the back side, you got the input, which is the bottom hose is the input. Top hose is the output. And on the other side, bottom hose is the input, top hose is the output. Now what we want to do is we want to tee together the 2 bottom hoses and the 2 top hoses and then install them onto the reservoir. This is the input port for the reservoir, and the one on the bottom there is the output port. So we'll connect both of our bottom hoses here, our input to our generator, to the output port of the reservoir, and connect both of our top hoses to the input port on the side of the reservoir. Okay, let's get a good look at the plumbing here. I've got the hoses connected. As you can see, connected to the bottom port of the reservoir, I have both of the bottom ports of the generator. And to this input port, the side port, you can see I have both the top ports connected to it with the Ys. As you can see, I use hose clamps. Very important to use hose clamps. And you can also see that I've replaced my drain plug with a valve. This is optional, you don't have to do this, but it does make it nice when you need to drain and maintenance the generator. You can hook a hose right here and drain it into a bucket. And you can drain it by simply turning this. So it's a nice little added option. Alright, so now we have the generator installed, the reservoir installed, and all the plumbing hoses. Next we will go on to the electrical portion. Okay, we're going to go ahead and install the circuit breaker and then the relay, but before we do, there's a couple things you need to know about the relay. This is the relay for the 1 to 5 liter system, and this is the relay for all the others. On the top of it here, you'll see it says 30, 87, 86, and 85. That corresponds to the pins underneath. You can see the 30, 87, and these two. There's 86 and 85. On the large relay, this is what's considered the upright position. This is the 30 pin. This is the 87. This is 86, and this is 85. Now on the circuit breaker, you just need to know that this is a manual reset circuit breaker, and that this circuit breaker is an automatic reset. So if this trips, about a minute later it'll come back on. Okay, let's go ahead and hook up the circuit breaker. What we're going to do is we're going to take power from the positive battery terminal into the circuit breaker. On this circuit breaker here, you can see the 60 amp is facing up. This is the input side. So we'll come from the battery into this side and out this side to the relay. On this circuit breaker, it's actually marked. It says battery, and then the auxiliary is here, so you'll come in from your battery into this terminal and out that terminal into the relay. Now you can see that the circuit breaker is installed. I installed it up high on the firewall so that no dirt and debris or water can get to it. Connected to the positive terminal of my battery, gone into the left side of the circuit breaker, and I'm going out this side to number 30 on my relay. It's also a good idea to trip the circuit breaker into the off position before you start to do this, because if you ground to the frame by accident, you'll get a nasty shock. As you can see, I've installed the relay behind the battery here. It's high up in the engine, so it'll stay nice and clean and won't get wet. Out of our circuit breaker, we come out and we go to pin 30 of the relay. Now we're going to go from pin 87 down to the positive terminal of our HHO generator, which is this right one right here. Alright, we have now attached positive wire coming off of pin 87 of the relay, and we've got it going down to the positive terminal of the HHO generator. Now what we're going to do is we're going to hook up the negative side of the generator, and if you purchased a PWM, you will want to watch another video on how to install the PWM. In this video we're just going to do a basic install without a PWM. What we're going to do is attach our negative wire to this side of the generator, and we can attach it to the negative side of the battery or anywhere on the body, on a good body ground. We'll go ahead and do that. Alright, and now you can see I have the negative battery terminal connected to the negative terminal of the HHO generator, and again, this can be grounded to the battery or a good body ground. Alright, continuing with the electrical portion of this install, we're going to want to connect a 16 to 22 gauge wire from pin 85 to any grounding point on the car. You can ground it to the battery, the negative battery terminal, or any one of the grounding points. I'll go ahead and connect that now. Okay, I've now got the wire connected here to pin 85. I've got it running right over here to the chassis ground right here. Alright, the next part of this video is very important. Under no circumstances can the HHO generator run when the engine is off. And let me explain the reason for that. A lot of people will just use an on-off switch to start up their system. So when you start your car up, you flip your switch, your system's on. That's great, you're saving money on fuel. The problem is when you turn your engine off and you forget to flip this switch, the HHO generator will still run. What that will do is it will fill up your air plenum full of HHO. When it's full, it'll start leaking out wherever, but the second you start your engine, this whole thing will explode. So in order to prevent that, we're going to take some safety precautions. It is not good enough to wire in your generator into the accessory on your ignition. I hear that a lot. Because what happens is you turn your ignition on, turn it over to accessory or your ignition on, listen to the radio, whatever you're doing. Let's say you left this on. So now the same thing is going to happen. So we're going to take precautions so that this system only runs when the engine is running. When the engine is not running, the system should be off. Okay, there are a couple ways we can get power to our relay only when the engine is running, and one of them is using a vacuum switch. Vacuum switch is not included in any of the systems we sell, but we will leave links to sites where you can obtain a vacuum switch. The way I recommend doing it, and this might be a little bit harder to do, but you won't need to purchase a vacuum switch, is you want to take power off your fuel pump relay. Every modern car has a fuel pump relay, and what it does is it provides power to your fuel pump, but this relay has a pin on it that's only hot, meaning it only gets power when the engine is running. So we're going to find the fuel pump relay and hook our wire into that pin that's hot only when the engine is running, and run it in through the firewall into our switch, our auxiliary override switch, and then back out the switch to our pin 86 on our relay. I'm going to go through this in detail so there's no confusion on how to do it. This is the fuse and relay panel. Most cars will have this. Actually, all cars will have this. To find your fuel pump relay, you may have to look it up on the internet, or just look for this big box. You open it up, it's going to have a bunch of relays in it, a bunch of fuses, type things like that. If you can't find it, you can go to any auto parts store, ask them where it is. They can show you a schematic of where your relay is. On this truck, makes it pretty easy. Everything here is spelled out. And right here is number 58. And we come down here to number 58 and it says fuel pump relay. So we'll go over here and figure out that this is the relay right here, the fuel pump relay. So now what you want to do is, with the vehicle off, you want to position your, see if I can get the voltmeter here in the frame. Okay. Take a voltmeter, set on your 20 volt setting. Negative is going to just go to the battery terminal, which is right here. And now your positive is, this is what you're going to use to probe the relay to find that pin. So what we do is we'll take our relay and we'll pull it up. You can pull it out, inspect it, look at it. You can see there it's got 5 pins. Now what you want to do is you want to set it back down into the socket, just barely connecting, so that the relay will still function, but you can probe the different prongs. And now what we want to do is set our vehicle to the on position, not the accessory, but the on position, but not start it. Okay, it's now in the on position. We're going to go ahead and we're going to probe all 5 of the pins and see what kind of voltage we get. Okay, so this one has power in the on position, so we know this is not the right one. The next one has power, so we know that's not the right one. Now the 3 in the front, that one there doesn't have power. center one in the front has power, and this one here has power. Now what we're going to do is we're going to start the engine and check to see if this one that didn't have power has power. As you can see now, this pin does have power. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our wire and we're going to connect it to that pin. I'll show you how to do that. Alright, have the wire here. So you want to go ahead and strip it back. Pull the relay out. Push the wire down into the socket. And replace the relay. Like so. Now our wire is connected. We can route it out of the box. And there you go. This is an important step for being safe. Please don't skip this step. Next we're going to go into the vehicle and hook up the auxiliary shutoff switch. Alright, we're inside the vehicle now. And what I've done is I've run my wires through this hole that I've drilled. This is a 3/4 inch hole. You can drill with a paddle bit. The switch, on the switch you'll see it'll have a plus, and then on the left terminal, the middle will have an A, and then the right terminal will have a little ground symbol. On the plus terminal, we're going to hook the wire from our fuel pump relay into the plus terminal, and then the wire going back to the HHO generator relay, we're going to hook to the center terminal, the A. And then we're going to hook a ground terminal to this one here that says the little ground symbol. This here, you hooking up the ground will cause the little LED light to illuminate when it's on. It'll still work without this, but it has a nice little light to show you that it's on or off. So I'm going to go ahead and wire that up now. And there we go. Next up, we're going to connect the HHO output from our reservoir into our engine. I get asked this all the time. Where is the best place to inject the HHO? Well, you can inject the HHO anywhere from the filter to the intake of the engine. You don't want to inject it after the throttle butterfly. That is the high vacuum side of the engine. You don't want to install it there. You want to install it on the low vacuum side, which is between the intake butterfly and the filter. Now if your vehicle has an MAF sensor, It'll be located somewhere in the air plenum, and it'll have a connector with some wires in it. You want to install your port after the MAF sensor, between the MAF and the intake butterfly. So anywhere, let's say it was right here, anywhere in this area here. The reason for that is if you connect it before the MAF sensor has a hot wire in it, and it measures the amount of reduction of temperature from the air flowing by it, and that's how it senses the airflow. But you don't want the HHO coming in contact with that hot wire, so we want to put it in after the MAF sensor. And what you want to do is on this vehicle, I'm going to install it right here in the air box, right before this rubber fitting. What you want to do when you do decide to install it, wherever you decide to install it, you want to take this portion off the engine, and you want to go ahead and drill a hole. This is 7/16 hole. You drill a 7/16 hole, this will thread right in. The reason why you want to take this off is when you drill that hole, you're going to get some shavings down inside. You want to make sure you get that all cleaned out before you put it back onto the engine. You don't want those shavings being sucked in to the engine. So I'm going to go ahead and install my port. Okay, I've installed my port. And it is right on the back side here. You can see it right there. Next we'll install the slug catcher. What this does is we put it in between the reservoir and our intake for the HHO into the engine. What this does is it catches any foam or any water or anything that might escape your reservoir will be trapped in the bottom of this little tank here. This tank doesn't need to be mounted. As a matter of fact, I recommend you don't mount it, because if you ever need to empty the tank, you just take the lid off, and you'll be able to, with the hoses connected, you'll be able to turn it and empty it. So I'm just going to install this right over here in a free area that is accessible to me. So I'll just install it right in there, and I'm going to hook up a hose from our reservoir to the slug catcher. Okay, I've hooked up my hose. And now what we're going to do is we're going to hook up the flashback arrestor. A couple things about it. It is bi-directional, so you can hook it up either way. When you blow through it, you'll notice that it is restrictive. It is supposed to be that way. What will happen is your HHO generator will generate just a slight amount of pressure, and then it will flow normally through this arrestor. So what I'm going to do is install a small piece of hose between the slug catcher and the arrestor. Right. Now we're going to hook the arrestor to the intake of our engine. Now it is very important that a 5-foot piece of hose be installed between the arrestor and the intake. In case of backflash, or a backfire from the engine will cause a backflash, you will need 5 foot of hose here for this arrestor to function properly. So I'll hook up my 5 foot of hose, coil up the rest, install it right onto the port. We can use a zip tie back here this hose and leave it nice and neat back here in the back. Make sure it doesn't get it next to anything hot, like the exhaust manifold. Alright, that basically concludes the installation of this system. Next we're going to go on to the water mixing procedures. Okay, now we're going to go over how to mix the water. You're going to need some distilled water. You can pick that up at any grocery store. Potassium hydroxide, or KOH. You can get that from our approved vendors. But any KOH that is 90% or better pure will work. You don't want to use any sodium hydroxide, baking soda, or any vinegar, any of those other kind of things. The only approved electrolyte is potassium hydroxide. You're going to need some gloves, chemical splash goggles, got a 1 teaspoon measuring device. This will measure our water, and an optional scale. Okay, I've got my gloves on and my goggles on. First thing we want to do is measure out 2 liters of distilled water. This here has some measurements on the side. We'll measure out to 2 liters right there. Alright, next we're going to measure out 8 to 10 teaspoons KOH and drop it into our water. Or if you have a scale, you can measure out 50 grams and put it into the 2 liters of distilled water. So the mix is 2 liters of distilled water for every 8 to 10 teaspoons of KOH, or 2 liters of distilled water and 50 grams of KOH. Your generator may use more than 2 liters. You can go ahead and mix up 2 more liters if you need more water. Okay, on our reservoir, you want to measure approximately 2 inches down and make yourself a mark. That will be your high water mark. You fill it up to that point or below, will be okay. When you get a little bit higher than that, sometimes when your vehicle's turning corners or you're on a bumpy road, you might splash some out into this. Okay, now remove the lid and we'll pour our water in. It'll take a couple minutes for it to settle down into the generator and fill up the hoses. As you can see, mine is a little bit low, so I'm going to mix up some more water so I can get to my high water mark. For safety reasons, when we're mixing up our KOH, we always use gloves and chemical splash goggles, because KOH is very corrosive, and if you get any of it on your skin or in your eyes, you could burn or blind yourself. So we always use a pair of gloves and a pair of goggles. As you can see here, I've got it up to my high water mark. I've put approximately 3 liters in this. We'll go ahead and put our cap back on. Now this cap, you want to make sure you get the cap tight. It has a seal here, and when the cap seals, the HHO is forced out this line and into the engine. Alright, we'll go ahead and start the vehicle and flip our circuit breaker to the on position. Okay, I now have the engine started. We're going to go ahead and flip our circuit breaker to the on position, and I've turned the auxiliary switch to the on position on the inside. Alright. make sure this cap is tight, and also you want to make sure that this cap is tight. Let's check out the production. You can see it's producing a lot of HHO. Now that your system is running, you're going to want to break it in. To do this, you want to run your system for 1 to 2 hours. Then you want to drain all this water out and dispose of this water. That cleans out any particles or any oils that were on the plates or the gaskets. And then go ahead and fill it up again with the water mixing instructions. And then you're set to go. It is recommended that you top off your water back to your high water line every time you get gas or diesel. And that concludes this video of the installation of the GFX products at greenfuelh2o.com. I want to thank everyone for purchasing this system and enjoy driving your hybrid. This is Steve. Thanks for watching.